Hey, back again for another dev diary. Today I'm going to be doing a bit more freeform dev diary and showing you the behaviour trees that I've been setting up to give my villagers a little bit of life. So I'll give you a quick example of what that's going to look like. So we have our villagers here. Right now he's in an idle state, and whilst in his idle state he will just look around the world for places he can interact. So in this case he's found an idle spot. He will also just wander around. If there's a path, he will try and stick to the path where possible. And then when he takes an idle spot, he'll basically register that he's in that idle spot so no one else can use it. He'll stay there for a set amount of time, and then he'll wander off, do something else, and then find another idle spot. So if we have a look at some other ones, we have like this tree here, we have a tavern, and then if I just spawn some more villagers, so you can see here they've occupied these idle spots, and the idle spot also holds the animation that they'll be doing as well. Cool. And then, as well as the idle spots, we can also issue tasks. So in this case, I'm asking these to be chopped down. I've changed it so when there's a task, they run, because usually it's something important that needs doing, like building a building, chopping down a tree, collecting a resource. So ideally, you want them to move fast, and then when they're carrying resource, obviously the animation doesn't fit at the minute, but you don't want them running while they're carrying a large resource. And yeah, when they have a resource, they will basically take that back to a resource point. In this case, it's the town centre, but you could have like a barn or a supply depot, and they would take it back there. And then after that, they would go back to their idle state. We also have the ability now to add jobs as well. So it's been a while since I've shown this, but we now have farmhouses. And with these farmhouses, you can also, ignore the UI, we can also place down farms. And then this would gives us 2 farmer jobs. So if we assign someone, you can see here, this guy's been assigned. And when he is assigned as well, he also changes his outfit. So if I show you, if it goes back to normal, so this is his idle one, and then back to a farmer. We also have a blacksmith as well. Just give me some more resources. Cool. So this one again, bang. Someone around here will be a blacksmith, and then he will walk over to this place, interact with the blacksmith. Doing that in the behavior tree is what produces or takes up the resource, and then after he's done enough generation, he will be given a resource to take back. So he'll do this for a while, and inside it's ticking up, basically counting how much he's contributing, and then once he has enough, he'll be carrying the resources. And in the end, I want to make it so you can actually click on the guy and it'll tell you how many resources he has. We also have the ability to now select people, and while selected, these people will stop and look at the camera. This is useful if you want to get information on them, but you don't want them to walk off. And in the future, I also want to add some interaction, so you can basically, pick them up, flick them, really kind of have that toy box feel, which is quite cool. And then lastly, some other stuff I've been doing as well is, so now resources are now selectable, and again that toy box feel of like when you select it, it actually does something. Same with the package resources on the floor, the boxes, you can actually click on them, and you can almost like flick them about as well a little bit, just to make it feel like it's alive. And then I started working on some other buildings as well, so we now have tents. These are going to be your starting residents. Going up from there, then it goes to like houses and stuff. So the houses also had a bit of a redesign. And then lastly, I've also worked on the selection as well. So when you select something, it becomes in focus. So if I select this, you can see that's in focus now. If I select this, this is in focus. Same with this guy over here. Which gives like a really nice effect when you're, you're down low and you want to just like select him, and now the background's like all nice and soft. So if I select this, you know, he's now nice and soft. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm up to at the minute. And then in this dev diary, we'll go through and I'll show you how I set up the behavior tree to basically allow them to do tasks and jobs. Tasks are stuff that needs doing in the world, for example, cutting down a tree, collecting a resource, etc. Jobs are, as you can see, like being a blacksmith, being a farmer. Cool. So yeah, let's dig in. Cool. So this is the behavior tree for the settler. On the left here, you can see the behavior tree order. So we have basically, am I selected? If I am, we will run this. If I'm not selected, do I have a resource? And if I do, then I'll go off and I deliver it. If I don't have a resource, do I have a job? If I don't have a job, do I have a task? And if I don't have a task, I will just basically go off and idle. So selected, this is the most important because you basically want to override all kind of behavior tasks and just basically go, just stop what you're doing and just look at the player. And then if the player interacts with the villager as well, we also want to be able to handle that without having to worry about anything else. Deliver resources is second because that's the second most important task, but it also needs to bypass the job and the task because these can give resources. So in the job and the task, we want to be able to say, here's a resource, and then that ought to be handled in the behavior tree where the settler just goes, okay, I have a resource. Now I just need to go off and deliver that to a point, and then once I've done that, I can kind of break out with this and come back to where I was before. Jobs are obviously more important than tasks because you don't want to be assigning jobs and then they're going off and start cutting down trees and stuff and you're not producing food and iron or whatever else. So jobs trumps tasks. And then tasks, we have a task check here, which just basically every so often just goes, hey, is there any task to do? If there is, I'll go off and I'll do all this logic down here to do it. If not, then I'll just go idle off somewhere. Cool, and then also in the job behavior tree, we also have this run job behavior tree. This allows me to dynamically set these. So instead of having behavior trees down here for each job, we can just basically, when this is run, trigger this to dynamically link to a different tree using gameplay tags. So up here you can see I have a gameplay tag here, jobs.ai.bt. That's set in my character blueprint, and basically it'll just go, once the data's been cached from the settlement manager, which is where I store all the character settler data, this will update and it will assign the behavior tree. And right now, both behavior trees look very similar because they're very basic. But we have the farmer one here, with the blacksmith one here, and then here all I do is basically they find out what job building they're meant to be in, move to that building. Once they're at that building, then it will just perform the job animation, and in this job animation is just the interface which just every so often just goes perform job. So this is how we kind of like tick up the resource generation and stuff. So you can, in the fields, every time there's ticks, for example, the fields will get a little bit bigger based on, you know, what kind of season they're in. Let's dig in a little closer into these behavior trees. So let's go over the selected one first. So this basically is triggered on this simple blackboard key. This blackboard key here is basically, am I selected? And if it is, the observer aborts everything below it. So it will basically abort all this. Because it's on birth, it also aborts itself if it's no longer selected, which means that all this is handled is based on basically the single key, which is set in the character. So if I just bring up my character. So what I have is a settlement manager, which handles all stuff kind of like jobs and tasks and settlers, etc. And every time there is some new information on a settler, I basically pass it down into the character through here, and then once it's in here, I just basically go through this and I do stuff like update the blackboard keys, the UI in game. This is just temporary. This again is temporary at the minute, but this basically will, you know, show that crate above the head. This will be handled a bit more elegantly later on. This is just temporary. This is to make it, again, just put in quickly, this just basically swaps the mesh based on the job, so I can get a good idea of at the minute who does what. And then what I told you earlier was when they have a task, they will run to it, which is just, yeah, it means that they can get to the tasks quicker. So yeah, here is where I set the blackboard keys. So for example, you know, am I carrying a resource? I basically set it here. Am I carrying a resource? And then in here, which does this blackboard based condition here, have a resource. So as soon as that information is cached into this, it's set here, and then this behavior tree will listen out for that, respond, and then cancel the subsequent trees down here, or branches. And then going back to the selected, we have this simple, so this is just again temporary. At the minute this just looks towards the player, and it's a bit of a hacky way. You can just set in a focal point, and that will just kind of spin that pawn round always. You don't really notice it because the camera's moving around as well, but it is on a tick. So if the camera was still and it was turning around, you'd see it ticking round. But as you're turning the camera, you do actually notice it as well. Again, this is not the most elegant way to do it because this just turns the mesh. We actually want to get that pawn to play a rotation animation as it looks around the camera. I also want to do it so we can change the bones in the mesh as well, so that the pawn's head will focus on the player first, and then once that bone has reached a limit, that's when the pawn will actually rotate. That way, if you click on a settler and they're like almost facing you, they won't actually rotate. You'll just stop what they're doing and their head will look at the camera, and then once you've rotated past a certain amount, then the whole pawn will start to rotate as well. Cool. So then if we look at this delivering resources, so as I showed you earlier, this basically here just checks that if we have a resource, and if we do, we just want to cancel stuff below it. That means that if we're doing a job or a task or idling and we still have a resource, then we want to cancel all the tasks, all the branches below it. So here we have, this is just a simple function I have that basically is triggered when it hits a certain point in a tree. Probably not the best place to do it, but right now this is fine. And this just basically sets an in-world notification that just says they're carrying the resources or they have a job or whatever. It's just so I can easily track it. And then we have a sequence here, and the sequence means that it will move left to right until one of their children fails. So first of all, we have move to a resource drop-off point. So this will find the closest resource drop-off point. In this case, it's just the town centre, but later on, like I said, it will be storage depots, etc. So it finds the nearest building, sets the, so you can show here. So again, this is nasty, but I will change it. So basically we're getting the town centre, and then we are setting the blackboard value as an object. You make sure you expose that if you do that. And then in here, we have this key here, and it will then set this. And then the task, we have basically when this runs, it will hit this, execute AI, and all this is doing is get an entrance location, which is this is set. Where is this set? Yeah. This is set in the character. So I actually set this when I cache the data. So if I look here, keys, transit, move to actor. Resource drop off. Oh, sorry, these are the same thing. Yeah, my bad. I just named them badly. This shouldn't be moved to actor. So we're basically doing here is moving to getting this actor as a value as an actor, so it gets this blackboard key, interprets it as an actor, and then we send an interface message to this actor, basically saying where is your entrance location, which is set in each building. We then set up a move to location erector, and then this either succeeds or fails and then finishes the execution. And if we abort this task, which means something above it is basically cancelling it out, or there's some reason we have to fail this branch, we can then call stop movement, which will stop this. If you don't do that, this will carry on until this is executed. Cool. And then when we are at that point, so once you have reached this point, this will successfully execute, which means that this has succeeded and it can move on to the next branch, and then it runs this task, which is drop off a resource. So here, as soon as it executes, I basically get a manager, which is, I have a list of all my managers here. I get the ID of the controlling pawn. IDs are really useful because when you load and serve in, you lose all the references and pointers and stuff. So just giving everything an ID means you can have those IDs through when you load and serve, and it's just a quick way just to kind of like find a settler. You can just go find by ID. And also, yeah, just passing information along like this, I can just quickly just go deliver, and I can just say, here's a settler ID, go deliver it, and it'll handle all that in the back. So we execute this, we get the settlement manager, get the ID of the pawn, and then we basically go to the settlement manager, hey, deliver this resource from the settler, and what this will do is it'll basically query this settler, go, okay, what resources do you have on you? Okay, cool, let's add those to the stockpile, done, and then we finish execute, and then once that's finished executing, this will finish, and then it will basically do the whole process again and see what it needs to do next. So next, let's look at the idle. So the way this works, this is the last one on the tree. It's basically the lowest priority. Only do this if you're unemployed and you have nothing else to do. So we've got two options. First of all is this one, and this is basically how the settlers find an idle's location. So I've got a cooldown which runs after this, and that just basically means that they're not going to just find an idle spot. As soon as they finish, they go, okay, then just find another one. It means they will actually do some walking around for a while, which is good because you don't want everyone just like sitting around and doing nothing, because the town or city or whatever will feel quite empty because everyone will be in certain positions not doing much. You actually want some movement in there. So once this cooldown's finished, we then find a free idle spot. And how this works is basically it goes, do I have an idle spot? If I do, then I already just return true. This is good for saving and loading. So basically, when I save it and then load it back up again, I kind of recache all the keys, and it means that I don't have to do all this again because this will all be set behind the scenes. And it just goes, yeah, I already have an idle spot. Okay, just carry on and just go to the next part. But if I don't, then I get the settlement manager again. I send off my settler ID, and then this behind the scenes will cycle through all the idles points in the game. If there's a free one, it will basically say, hey, this settler wants one, can I occupy it? If I can, okay, occupy it, so no one else can take it, and then send all the information through to the settler, and then that returns true. Because that's returned true, it means that this has now succeeded, and we can trigger these. So the first part is we move to, and this is just basically in here. This is a base vanilla one, and I'm just giving it a vector, and it's just saying, okay, just move to this location, and this will be next to or near the idle spot. Once this has succeeded, we then just play a simple idle animation, and this works by basically as soon as this triggers, we get the pawn. This is just again a dirty hack at the minute, but I just basically want to get the mesh and just put the location and rotation so it matches the point. Otherwise, we're going to have people staring the wrong way or sitting the wrong way or whatever, and it just looks weird. But again, it's not the best way to do it, but for now that'll be fine. We tell the pawn to play a montage. Montages are good because you can just play them and they'll just do all the logic of whether it should be playing or not in the background. We set a min and max idle time. Again, these are exposed, so you can change them here. And then once that has finished, I need to put a check in here actually in case we cancel this while this delay is going. Once this is finished, we then end the anim and release the idle point. we also do that if we have to abort this tree early as well. So if it's aborted and this no longer runs, we also do this, but so it's a bit of checking here. And then what this will do is basically tell the pawn just to stop the montage, otherwise he will just carry on sitting down even though he's walking about. This will make him also just return to his normal animation cycle, so he'll start walking like normal. Ignore this. And then we get the settlement manager, and we basically go, look, we've finished with this idle point, release it so other people can use it. And again, in this case, all we do is send an idle ID. We don't need to send a settler ID because we just need to know which idle point it is, and then cycle through the idle points and go, this is now released, add it back into the pile. So that's the idle stuff. And then this is, behavior tree 101 here. This is just basically find a random location, move to it and wait. Slightly changed it a little bit here. Again, this is old and all needs changing. This is pretty dirty. But this was just so I could find a valid path location, and this meant they would like walk along the paths instead of just walking randomly. But I want to change this. You can actually set priorities up in the nav mesh, so they will use paths when they can, because they'll sort of give a different nav mesh. Again, this is still low priority at the minute. I just haven't really got back to it. Cool, and then last one we'll go over today is the perform a task. So what we do here is when if we don't have a job or a resource, or we're not selected, we basically say go to here and go when it ticks. So basically, while we're doing any of this, we just tick here and just say, have we got a task? If we haven't, do we say, is there any tasks to do? And if there is, this again will assign it in the background, and then when it runs, it will basically trigger down here. This has a task. If it's set, we'll then also abandon the idle as well. So we don't want, so even though this is running, as soon as we set that we have a task, we want to be able to just say stop this part of the idle, because we don't want you to sit around doing nothing anymore. Come over here and do this part of the idle, which is actually performing the task. So here we have the set status, and again, all this basically doing is just setting the status, so I can update that in other places and do checks. Very simple. And then check the task condition. So this is basically just making sure that the task is still active. So if there's any reason why this task is no longer active, which it gets through the character's cache data, then we can just kind of like abandon it. It's just like a fallback. So here, simple again, just move to task location. So here we, when this runs, it basically goes, what's the actor that we've exposed here? So in this case, it would be like a tree. So that's the goal actor. Here's the acceptance radiance. We untick lock all logic, because if we don't, if we try and cancel it further up the tree, this will still be running. So if we untick this, it just means that we can cancel this out. And then again, if they successfully get there, we can finish it. If they don't, we can abandon it. And if they do have to abandon it, then we can stop the movement and finish the abort. This is old. Cool, and then once they're there and this has succeeded, we move on to the next part, which is perform task. So this is done 2 steps. So we have the task, which is perform a task, and this just activates this task. This is placeholder, there'll be more stuff here. But the actual task isn't done in the task, which is weird. It's actually done in the service, because this can just tick along. So while this is running, this is why in here I don't actually finish the execute. So once it runs into here, it'll run this, but it never actually finishes, so it just sits on this. And then while it's sitting here, this service will basically run at a 1 second interval. And then the service, all this is doing is basically going, hey, pawn, my owner, what's your ID? Grabs that, and then it just sends that across to its current task actor, which is set somewhere else. So this is basically saying, like, every second, the building that the actor that is my task actor, so a tree, a rock, a building site, whatever it is, basically I am performing the task, and it will send that message off. And then if we look at how that's used, So this is the this is the world resource base, which it means this is going to be either a tree or a rock or something that can be removed from the world, kind of to make room, and also to collect resources. And in here we have an interfaces graph, and then this comes through. So from here, so every tick, every second, we say this settler with this ID is performing the task on this building, comes through here, and again ignore the print strings, but we are basically here performing a clearing. So this comes through performing a clearing, and in here all we're doing is basically checking the health. If the health is reduced, we clear the resource and spawn a packaged resource, which is then something that the settlers can collect. Cool, thanks for watching. Hopefully that helped you understand behavior trees, or at least give you tips for how to set up a behavior tree if you haven't really set them up before. If you have any questions, feel free to just post them below and I'll get back to you. Again, really appreciate you watching these videos and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.